The information provided by Trading Forex Price Action to you does not constitute personal financial advice. The information provided is of a general nature only and does not take into account your individual objectives, financial situation, or needs. It should not be used, relied upon, or treated as a substitute for specific professional advice.
Midweek Analysis.
Hey guys, this is a midweek analysis for September 15th of 2021. Okay, we'll start off with the pound dollar. This is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since this horizontal trend line right here, that's attached to this pivot right here, just recently became legitimate with 3 touches. There's 1, 2, and 3 right here. And since price has a tendency to want to test strong levels, in the long term I am long biased right back up to this pivot high right here. However, on the weekly chart, since there's more short strength than long strength, in the short term I'm short biased right back down to this pivot low right here. Okay, let's talk midweek price. Okay, this is a weekly chart. Let me run you by the setup I've been looking at for the past couple of months. So there was a strong short trade that formed right here, and a week long trade formed right here. So at this point, the bias was short, or in other words, price is likely to reach this pivot low right here before reaching this pivot high. And that target was hit right here. And then moreover, as price pulled back, I was still looking for short entries. However, if you recall at this point right here, there was compact long price action that formed that shows strong long strength. And thus at this point, the bias changed into long, or in other words, price is likely to reach this pivot high up here before reaching this pivot low. And that target was here right here. And simultaneously, there was another strong weekly short trade that formed right here. And as price came down to these levels, another week long trade formed right here. So again, the bias was short, so price was likely to reach this pivot low right here before reaching this pivot high. And that target was hit here. And moreover, another week long trade formed. So currently the weekly bias is short, or in other words, price is likely to reach this pivot low right here before reaching this pivot high. Okay, and therefore last week, if you recall, I took a short entry at this 1.3835 levels right here, with the stop loss at this pivot high right here, and its main target being at these 3660 levels right here. And as you can see, that stop loss was hit yesterday right here. However, I was able to abort this short entry at 1.3840 levels right here for a 5 pip loss, because 2 days ago, a 4-hour long trade formed in this area. However, I did take a 5 pip loss on this short entry. Now let me go ahead and explain to you the general reasons for this short entry, and moreover the reasons for this early abort of this short entry. Okay, so let's go over to the daily chart. Okay, so on this daily chart, that short trade was based on this daily short trade that formed right here, which is along with that weekly short bias. Now the stop loss was at this pivot high right here where the short trade formed, and this main target was at this 1.3660 levels right here, and the initial entry was at 38.35 roughly in these areas right here. Now the general reason I took this short entry to begin with is because it's along with the higher time frame, in this case the weekly time frame short bias. Now moreover, the one element that bothered me about this short entry was a medium to small weekly gap that engulfs this entire setup right here. Now if you watch my price action course, you'll know if that trades hit its target, the bias on that time frame will often reverse right back to the stop loss level of that pivot high right here. However, in my opinion, this weekly gap that engulfs this entire trade area right here was not big enough. So let me just go ahead and show you that first. Let's go over to the weekly chart. Okay, so on this weekly chart, I took that short entry roughly at this 1.3835 levels right here, with the stop loss at this pivot high right here. Now, as you can see, this entire daily trade setup on this weekly chart is engulfed by this weekly gap right here. Now, in my opinion, this weekly gap was not big enough to be a target for that short daily trade. However, this gap below, which is slightly bigger, was big enough. And that's the reason why my main target was at this 1.3660 levels right here, due to the possibility that if price hits this medium gap at these levels right here, and since the target was hit for that daily trade, price will reverse right back up. Okay, so in terms of evolving my strategy, I will be evolving it in terms of how big a weekly gap has to be for it to be a target for a daily trade. Now in this case, this gap that actually did become a target is 206 pips wide. So how my strategy will evolve is that from now on, if I do get another daily short trade and there's a weekly gap that is at least 206 pips wide, I will consider that a target from now on. Alright, now let me explain to you how I aborted this short entry at this 1.3840 levels right here. So let's go over to the 4-hour chart. Okay, so on this 4-hour chart, that main stop loss is right here at this level. And I took that short entry at this 1.3835 levels right here, with this main target at levels way down here. Now, if you recall in the weekly forecast, as I entered this short entry, I was mentioning there was a lot of 1 minute strong long price action. However, as price pulled back to 3 pips to my stop loss, I did not abort this short entry because strong 1 minute price action is not a reason for me to abort a short trade of this kind. And then as price fell down to these levels right here, there was a long trade that formed right here on this 4-hour chart. Now this 4-hour long trade is a counter bias setup. Now counter bias setup is simply a counter bias because the weekly bias is short. However, this 4-hour long trade is aiming to go long. Thus a counter bias setup. Now when it comes to trading against the higher time frames trend, which is short, I always need 1 minute confirmation of short-term long strength on the 1 minute chart. And that confirmation on the 1 minute chart formed right after on this candle right here. And so at this point, when I got that 1 minute confirmation, I aborted that short trade at 1.3840 at these levels right here for a 5 pip loss. Now the key thing to remember in this entire setup is that I did not abort a short trade due to price action I have never seen before, and only aborted a trade based on price action that I have encountered before. Now, like I mentioned before, following this rule allows the foundation of a strategy to be stable and gradually grow in its efficiency over time. Alright, so let me actually show you this 1 minute price action that confirmed this long strength in this area. So let's go over to the 1 minute chart. Okay, so on this 1 minute chart, that 4-hour long counter bias trade formed at this area right here. Then right after that, I got that confirmation of lower time frame short-term long strength right here. Now the type of lower time frame confirmation I use to know if there's any short-term long strength is this V-shaped recovery right here. Now typically if that daily short trade did not hit a main target and thus was a legitimate short entry along with the higher time frames bias, upon a relatively strong fall like so, there will not be any strong recoveries as you can see right here. And so when that counter bias long trade formed at this area and more of this V-shaped recovery on this 1 minute chart formed, I aborted that short entry roughly at this 1.3840 levels right here. Okay, and one more thing to remember aside from this trade setup is that this type of price action with a strong V-shaped recovery right here and rather slight one right here, these are good examples of reading strength through how price moves. Now, like I always say, compact long price action shows strong long strength from the way it moves. Now, compact price action is a rather advanced type of price movement. However, these V-shaped recoveries have the same basic philosophy in which you read the future strength of the longs or the shorts by the way that price moves. Now again, although I don't recommend using V-shaped recoveries on its own as a strategy, this type of price action can be incorporated to your current strategy just to increase the amount of detail in terms of entry timing and abort timing of your current strategy. Okay, so that's just one thing to keep in mind. Alright, so lastly, let me just show what I'm looking at for this pair at this point. So let's go back to the weekly chart. Okay, again on this weekly chart, the current bias is short, or in other words, price is likely to reach this pivot low right here before reaching this pivot high. And thus I will be looking for short entries still. However, at this point, I will not be taking any daily short entries. Now, like I showed you before, at this point, any daily short entry will likely be stopped by these weekly gap levels that are providing as targets for those daily short entries. And therefore, the only way that I could see a short entry that's tradable to form is on this weekly chart. So if I get a strong short trade that forms on this weekly chart, which disregards the long strength of these weekly gaps, then at that point I'll be willing to take a short entry with a stop loss at hypothetical weekly short trades pivot high and its main target at this weekly bias's main target right here. Okay, and moreover, I'm always looking for any compact long price action to form, in which case this forms, I will change the bias from short into long, or in other words, price will now likely to be reaching the prior weekly short trade stop loss level right here before reaching this hypothetical compact long price actions pivot low. Okay, alright, so that's it for the midweek analysis. I hope you guys have a great week, and thanks for watching. Okay, bye.